قد أفلح المؤمنون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. Respected Muslim brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now, before we start, a short introduction, as usual, is always necessary. It has been a while. I know it's been a while. I know some of you guys have missed me and some of these biographies that we do, and I want to thank you for waiting patiently. And I also want to thank Brother Lucorios and Brother Nasser and Brother Muhammad Ali and all the other brothers who have been helping to provide us with, quite frankly, outstanding, impeccable content in my absence. So I left the ship in good hands, so to speak. Now, today's event, and I haven't done one of these in a long time, I've almost forgotten how to do them, is the intro to a top 10. So the reason why we do these events, the reason why we do top 10 events is just to do something different. Like I remember Brother Nasa and Brother Lucorios, they did their tier list, and that's not necessarily like, oh, let's hop on a trend. Let us try to be hip with the youth. We don't care if we are popular or we are following the latest trend. We, on the other hand, we are actually trendsetters. So we set the trends. Anyway, the reason why I do events like this, the reason why I do a top 10 is because it's interesting. It's because when you have someone who is educated in a field, you like to see their opinions sometimes. Like, yes, I want the facts, but what is your opinion? So this is one of those cases where I would like to give my opinion, and I do think that there are people out there who find my opinion interesting, inshallah. And as always, we want to keep it informative. We want to keep this informative. So what is today's event about? Today is going to be my top 10 list regarding the companions of Imam al-Husayn. And as we know, Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam had more than 10 companions. But this list, I narrowed it down to 10 people, to 10 of the companions of al-Husayn, because for a few reasons. Number one, 10 is that number that we always stick to. That fool Ibn Taymiyyah said the Shia loathe the number 10, but apparently here we are doing a top 10 list. Now, the other thing is that when it comes to the companions of Imam al-Husayn, there's not a lot of information about many of them. Pulling together the biographies of 10 of them was challenging in and of itself. Okay? So, in any case, when it comes to Imam al-Husayn and his companions, why do a top 10 list on them? Number one, like I said, I thought it would be interesting. I think people would find it interesting. They would find it educational. They would find it beneficial. But there's another reason as well. The other reason is that when it comes to the bio of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, which you can check out here, the bio of Imam al-Husayn salamullah alayhi, in order to keep it as concise as possible, we're not just going to do a chronological maqtal, where you just go through the story of his maqtal salamullah alayhi in chronological order. Okay, you can't you can do that, but it becomes very detailed, it becomes very meticulous, it becomes very difficult, it becomes very difficult to handle, we would say. Rather, for the biography of Imam al-Husayn salamullah alayhi, what I'm going to be doing is trying to focus on the life of al-Husayn himself. As for his companions, this event will cover their lives, and it will cover episodes from Karbala that will plug in those gaps. It will serve as a companion series to the biography of Imam al-Husayn, and it will do something to bring the companions of Imam al-Husayn justice. Because the companions of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn are truly something special. Many of us grew up hearing a few names here and there, like Zuhair and Habib ibn Mudahir, for example, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim. But then when it comes to other people like Abis, when it comes to other people like Burair and Nafi', no one knows who these people are. Like, these names are vaguely familiar, usually in the 10 nights of Muharram. Sometimes the Khatib will stop and talk about them for just a little bit at the end to tie it back to the Masa'ib. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be honoring these men. We're going to be honoring these heroes and seeing what we can learn from their respective biographies. So, with that being said, and as usual, our intention is not to offend anyone. Our intention is simply to educate. Now, one last thing that I would like to add regarding the biographies of the companions of Imam al-Husayn. When we present the sources, for our events, for our lectures. As usual, you're going to be able to see the scans, you're going to be seeing the references. So the references for the companions of al-Husayn are mainly two books, sometimes a third. So the books that we will be referring to are the two primary sources regarding al-Husayn's his martyrdom. And that is, of course, the Maqtal of Abu Mikhnaf that is narrated and transmitted by al-Tabari and al-Baladri. So if someone's wondering, like, why is he referring to these two sources all the time? It's because these are the two primary sources. We have sometimes al-Akhbar al-Tiwal, al-Akhbar al-Tiwal by Abu Hanifa al-Dinawari. Sometimes that source does come up. Occasionally, sometimes you may get al-Irshad. But overall, it's very consistent. It's mainly the Maqtal that was transmitted to us from Abu Mikhnaf by al-Tabari and al-Baladri. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. And one final note is that, again, these lists, whenever I do them, I know I did one on the companions of Rasulullah, I know I did one on the companions of Amir al-Muminoon, alayhi salam. This is not a ranking of which of the companions of al-Husayn is the best. Like, if someone is at number 1, that does not necessarily mean they are better than the one at number 10. These are all great men. And Hasha lillah that we would, start saying, one is better than the other. Allahu a'lam which one of them is better, which one attained the highest martaba among them. But the reason why I've ranked them in a top 10 list is which ones did I find most interesting to read about? Which ones did I find most interesting? So, that being said, let us go ahead and get started. Namdi ala barakatillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, at number 10, starting the list off at number 10, is Jawn bin Huwai. And there are some reports that refer to him as simply Huwai. And Jawn bin Huwai is a character who comes up a lot during the Majalis of Muharram. He comes up a lot in the stories that are recited every year, the Maqtal. Who is Jawn bin Huwai? Jawn bin Huwai is one of the companions of Imam al-Husayn salamullah alayhi, who there's actually not too much about him. He's someone we hear about a lot, but there's not too much on Jawn ibn Huwai. It has been narrated by al-Harith ibn Ka'b and Abu al-Dhahhak. They narrated from Imamuna Ali ibn al-Husayn salamullah alayhi, who said, I was sitting on that evening. He's describing the evening before the 10th of Muharram. He says, I was sitting on that evening before the morning in which my father was killed. With me was my aunt Zainab alayhi salam, who was nursing me. And again, this is a reference to the fact that Imamna Ali ibn al-Husayn salamullah alayhi, he was sick during the 10th of Muharram. When my father retired with his followers into his tent, with him was Huwai, the Mawla of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, who was preparing his sword and putting it right. And so this comes to us by way of al-Tabari in volume 19, page 117, as well as al-Baladri in Ansab al-Ashraf, volume 3, page 393. From this reference, and then Imam al-Husayn continues to describe, some of the things that happened, or Imam Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salam, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, salamullah alayhi, he goes on to describe some of the things that happened that night. But this reference to Huwai, Mawla Abu Dharr, or as some sources like Maqat al-Talibiyin call him Jawn bin Huwai, it confirms he's real. It confirms his existence. And it says that that night he was sitting with Imam al-Husayn salamullah alayhi, and they were preparing their weapons. They were preparing their arsenal for the next day. Tabari does not have any other reference to Huwai. This is the only reference that he has. In order to read the story of his martyrdom, this comes to us by al-Baladri. And again, these are the two main sources, al-Tabari and al-Baladri. These two, by piecing them together, we're able to piece together the Maqtal of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. So in Ansab al-Ashraf, volume 3, page 403 to 404, we read the story of his martyrdom. And so it is narrated that during the last stages of the battle, when al-Husayn's companions were fighting to defend him, he recited the following poem. He said, how do the transgressors see the strike of the black man, with his sword defending the progeny of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? I will defend them with my tongue and hand, hoping for paradise with them on the day of reckoning. And so he fought valiantly until he was martyred. May Allah be pleased with him. And so again, this is not a lot, but this is worthy of note, is that Abu Dharr, radwanullahi ta'ala alayh, as we know, was one of the great companions of Rasulullah, one of the great companions of Amir al-Muminoon. To see that his Mawla, his freedman, the slave that he had freed, had decided to stay with the Ahlul Bayt at this time, because we know the likes of Anas ibn Malik and the likes of Abdullah ibn Umar and the likes of Sulaiman ibn Surad al-Khuzai, these men betrayed al-Husayn. These men offered al-Husayn no support. These men were not there for him. But when it comes to this Mawla, this freedman, a freed slave, who, as we will see in the biography of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn, many times he told his companions, if any of you wants to leave, he is free to do so. These men are here for me. And yet we see that this freedman, this righteous man, Huwai ta'ala alayh, he decided to stay. He decided to fight for Abu Abdullah al-Husayn in spite of his age, in spite of the fact that he was not required to do so. But as he says in his poem, he was doing it for the sake of paradise. And also worthy of note, and this comes up a lot during the Majalis, is that, Huwai was a black man, and this shows you that al-Husayn's followers, not all of them came from one tribe, not all of them came from one background. They came from all sorts of backgrounds. Some of them were very wealthy, some of them were very poor, some of them had come from Hijaz, some of them came from Kufa. You have the odd ones from Basra, the odd ones who came from the desert. And this is something we see that's very beautiful, is that the mission of Imam al-Husayn salamullah alayh, as it was then, as it is now, is not limited to one specific group of people. It is for the mu'mineen, it is for the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam.